Welcome to the Burnout Room, a podcast about burnout, effective leadership, and well-being in nonprofits.
I'm Dr. Courtney Keim, a workplace wellness researcher and professor.
And I'm Sarah Burris, an organizational leader and nonprofit wellness advocate.
Whether you are facing burnout, leading a team, or working to build a healthier workplace, this is your space to find support, community, and solutions for any organization.
On today's episode, we're going to discuss a concept outlined in Dr. Christina Maslach and Dr. Michael Leiter's book, The Burnout Challenge. And I'm going to throw it over to Courtney so she can set the scene.
Yeah. So, Sarah, you and I have both read The Burnout Challenge. I have used it for my classes, and I thought that we could actually start this conversation. There's a lot of things that Christina and Michael talk about in the book, but the beginning of the book actually starts with a quote that I wanted to read to, get our conversation started today about burnout, maybe through a different lens than the way that we've talked about it before. So they start the book in this way. Across most of the 20th century in coal mines around the world, miners took caged canaries underground with them to test the air quality. The canary's high sensitivity to carbon monoxide and other toxic gases meant that if it swayed on its perch or even collapsed, the coal miners were forewarned in sufficient time to get out. The practice was ended by the 1990s. But to stretch the metaphor, let's say our hope was to keep more birds singing in the mines. What would be our best approach? Should we try fixing the canary to make it stronger and more resilient, a tough old bird that can take whatever conditions it faced? Or should we fix the mine, clearing the toxic fumes and doing whatever else necessary to make it safe for canaries and miners to do their work?
This just feels like such a great topic to talk about when we're sitting in the state of Kentucky, the original home of coal. 1750 coal was discovered in the state of Kentucky. So this feels perfect for today's conversation, Courtney.
Yeah. Well, thank you for throwing out your knowledge and facts that you might have learned from like whatever fourth or fifth grade when you do state history in Kentucky. I am not from Kentucky, so I did not learn all of those state facts. But yeah, I do think it's kind of apropos maybe that we're talking about this coal mine metaphor in the state of Kentucky, but really it's more important, I think, for us to talk about this in the state of like nonprofits.
Yes.
Because I think that this quote is going to be getting at the plight that a lot of nonprofits have, which is, can I kind of self-care my way in dealing with the burnout that I am facing? Like, do I just be a tough old bird that tries to get my way through this burnout, or can we do it differently? Can these mines be like run differently? Can the workplace be done differently in a way that prevents burnout from happening to begin with? And I think that's the reason why Christina and Michael bring this quote at the beginning of the book.
Yeah. And I mean, what a way to start it. I mean, it really does paint a really vivid picture for you about a workplace and about what burnout could look like in a workplace.
So what do you think, Sarah? Like, what is the canary to you? If we think about a modern day workplace, like, do you think that the canary in this metaphor that is given and the real life use of canaries in coal mines many, many years ago, is the canary like something in your workplace? Is it like a workplace survey? Is it the results of your engagement survey that are telling you something is up? Or is the canary like an actual worker in your workplace that's telling you that there is danger like ahead? Like, what do you think of when you're thinking about canaries in today's workplaces?
So first off, I'm very glad that we no longer utilize this practice of taking live birds down into potentially dangerous places where, yeah, that's not great. Glad we're not doing that anymore. I think when I'm thinking about the canary in this scenario, I am thinking about the canary as a worker. I'm thinking about someone who is in your organization, who is working towards your mission, who is maybe singing their songs, doing their thing. And then all of a sudden they're real quiet.
Yep.
And it's like, why are you quiet? What has changed to make you stop singing your little canary songs? I think I'm thinking about it as a leader from like as a like, uh-oh, something's going on here.
Yeah. And it could be that the person is becoming very quiet. It could be that the quiet person is not coming to work anymore.
Yep.
It could be that somebody that used to be a really kind of star performer for you is not performing at the ability that they used to be able to perform. It could be someone who maybe is not like singing loudly, but when they come into the workplace, they're at least positive.
Mm-hmm.
They're at least happy. They're not down. They're not negative about their workplace. And all of a sudden, they kind of start becoming that way. It becomes a signal potentially that, like, oh, something is wrong. Do you think that that a lot of leaders in workplaces would see that as like, oh, something's wrong with that person rather than something's wrong with the workplace?
Well, I think some leaders would look at it like we need tougher birds. Like maybe the
Right.
canary is not it. And I think that other leaders would look at it like, it, this canary is usually tip top shape, doing all the things we need it to do, and all of a sudden it's not doing those things. So I think it depends on the leadership. I think it depends on the way that the leader is looking at the canary.
But you can just go and search probably wellness or workplace wellness,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no shortage of articles that you are going to be able to find, I
Right.
think, that talk about, oh, stressed at work,
Mm,
self-care. Like, let's
yeah.
go get yourself a massage, go to the spa, take your vacation days, go reconnect, like all of those things. Go connect with people that you haven't talked
Yeah.
to in a long time. Go have a hobby outside of work. None of which I think is bad advice. But it really puts the onus on the worker to leave work and to go fix yourself, which, in the burnout challenge in the book, they discuss this a little later on in the book. A few chapters in, they talk about how there seems to be this tendency when workers are stressed and they're not doing as well as they used to be to kind of look at the worker and say, well, gosh, what's wrong with you? Like, why
Yeah.
can't you either be a more resilient bird, which, by the way, like, I guess I think of canaries as being quite delicate birds. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think of what would be a more resilient bird. Is that like, those
You're talking.
emus that are so like mean? Have you ever seen the emu on the
Yes.
farm and they like attack their workers? And I know here at the Louisville Zoo, there's Bob and his brother. These are emus. I think his name is JP. It's either JP or PJ. I can't remember. But my kid, we've been to the zoo so many times, and she did camp at the zoo that we know a lot of the names of all the animals. But these two emu birds cannot be together because they fight each other because they're so mean to each other. These brothers at the Louisville Zoo. So it's like, yeah, like, do I start like either hiring emus instead of canaries and saying like, you guys better just, you just need to get used to it, and like you just need to become more resilient, you need to do this work? Or do we just tell the bird to like just go on vacation and that will fix everything, like self-care your way through this terrible disaster that you're in?
Well, first off, I am incredibly impressed that you know the names of the emus at the Louisville Zoo. You impress me every day with your knowledge. You're incredible. I think when you're a leader and you're thinking about like canaries versus emus, I I don't know. I mean, I think when you think about the message that you're sending to the canary, that this is a you problem. You're too sensitive for this. You can't handle the stress of this. You need to take the onus on yourself to go home and meditate, and you need to go do yoga, and you need to book a massage on your own dime, and you need to like do all of these things so that you can come back and give your all for us. I just think that that's like a terrible message to give to a worker. Like
Yeah.
and so yeah, you may be able to bring an emu into your workplace. I love all these bird analogies that we're using right now.
Yeah.
You could bring some hard-headed, like tough emus into your organization, but I'll be honest, I bet you those emus are going to end up in the canary's position at some point if you don't change
Right.
your workplace.
Yeah. I mean, the canary is telling you that there's not enough oxygen
Mm-hmm.
and that you're going to not survive. And I know that that is like kind of dramatic, but yeah, burnout is dramatic. Like burnout is significant. Burnout, um, we know, is so highly correlated with serious negative outcomes, both for the employee and for the employer. You and I have both experienced burnout. We've both been in those really stressful situations where our health took a nosedive. Like I lost 10 pounds in 6 weeks
Mm-hmm.
working for my nonprofit. See episode 1 to hear more about my burnout story. But I only made it 6 weeks working in that residential treatment facility. And I lost 10 pounds at a time when I was in my 20s. I didn't have 10 pounds to lose. Really, the stress was so intense. I can't imagine staying in that job for very long. It would have been really, really detrimental to my health. So, yeah, I mean, like the canary is telling you there's not enough oxygen. That's dire. And I think if you are a leader and you have employees who are not just tired, who are not just in need of a vacation, but when we talk about burnout, we are talking about severe and extensive emotional and physical exhaustion. This is not just that you're tired, you're exhausted, your immune system gets tanked. You are potentially becoming cynical. You are not able to do as much in your work. Yeah. So it's like even an emu,
Mm-hmm.
a more resilient bird, is eventually going to face dire consequences by being in a toxic workplace.
And it might take a little bit longer for that emu to get
Yep.
there,
Yeah.
but it's still going to get there.
Right. At some point, I would like for us to have a more in-depth conversation about personality traits as they relate to which types of people are more likely to get burned out. So we'll have a future episode about that so we can really get into the nuance of that research. But what I will say is there is research to support the idea that some people are more susceptible to experiencing burnout maybe more quickly. So, for example, if you think about you can think about it as like the negative Nancy. I used to work with this girl in one of the restaurants that I worked at. So we waited tables together. And if you've ever waited tables, like what I'm going to tell you, you will feel this. Like this has also happened to you. The restaurant would open, and she would complain about how she needed money to pay her bills. And like, I need to make money on this shift. I need to make money on this shift. And so if the hostess would walk by with a table that walked in the door and go past her section, she would be mad because
Mm-hmm.
she didn't get that table. Then if the hostess came in with a table and sat a table in her section, she would be mad that she now had a table that she had to wait on.
Excellent.
And it's because you're like, oh, what do you mean I have to work now? It's like, what do you mean? Like that you want the table, but you don't want the table at the same time. And I guess all of us have experienced that a little bit, but I say that to say that she was the kind of person who was just a negative Nancy, never happy, always looking at the glass is half empty, always looking at the negative of everything, always complaining about everything. And you're like, look, like, what do you want? Like, nobody here really knows what you want. Do you want a table? Do you not want a table? They just wanted to look at everything through that negative lens. And so there is some research to show that like the negative Nancy's are going to be the first ones that are going to be experiencing that burnout and saying, that they are experiencing it. And then you like the positive polys are kind of the opposite of that. People who are more neurotic and less emotionally stable, which I think if I could just give you a little bit of another kind of example of what we mean by emotional stability, because I think some people are confused by that. Like, so emotional stability is a personality trait where you're kind of like on one side, you are emotionally stable, and on the other side, you're very neurotic. Well, what does that mean? Because all humans experience anxiety and fear to some level. Like we all are inside of our heads, kind of anxious sometimes. These authors of a book that I used when I taught personality some years ago use this way to describe that. what emotional stability is. You can think about emotional stability is like all of us humans, like pretend like we're all boats in the ocean, right? And life happens as life
Hmm.
does. And so the
Right.
kind of bad things or the tough things that happen in life, the challenges that we face are like waves in the ocean. Somebody who's on the emotional stability side can keep their boat afloat even when there are big waves. It's not that you are not afraid. You might be experiencing some fear or some anxiety, but you can just kind of keep your life upright when life hits you as it does. If you're more on the neuroticism side of that personality trait, even the smallest waves tip your boat.
Mm.
So people who are more neurotic are more likely to raise their hands and say, yo, I'm burned out. I am cynical. I am emotionally exhausted. Like, so they are kind of like the canaries that are singing the first in the coal mine, are people who are more neurotic and not as emotionally stable. Again, I'd like to talk a little bit more into the nuance of the personality stuff, but I bring all of that up to say that like there is something to the idea of like there is a level of personal responsibility that we have to take care of ourselves, and that some people might not be suited for all jobs. So I think
Yes.
about like my brother-in-law who retired Marine. He's now in the Army. He was a firefighter, an ER nurse. Like, this is just the kind of person that runs towards the danger.
Yes.
That is the kind of person, if you will, that you would like doing those jobs. Do you know who would you would not like working in the ER? Is
Me.
me, me and you. Neither one of
The two of
us.
us.
The
The
two
two
of
of
us.
us.
I passed out when I got my ears pierced when I was 14 years old.
Excellent.
So, like, there are some jobs that I am just not suited for. And perhaps, anything related to blood and needles would be one of them. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's like something to be said for you have a personal responsibility to find the right kind of job and that you also are taking care of yourself.
Right. Because
However, like, yeah, but can't blame me for like being in a bad coal mine.
right. And so I think that's an important point that you're making. Like we as people, we as nonprofit people, speaking from my own perspective, like there are things that I should do to take care of myself.
Yes.
Um, I like talking about me personally. I attempt to meditate. It is not easy, but I attempt it. Yoga. I am just so lucky to be married to a massage therapist. So, like, there are things that I am doing to take care of myself. And those things help me be a more resilient person, just in general, which of course will bleed over into my work life. I can be more patient. I can, deal with a flurry of things happening around me better if I'm in a better mindset. That being said, those things, while they may prolong the onset of burnout for me, will not get rid of the potential for burnout for me.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that that's just a really excellent point. I also
Yeah.
really like the point of like there are certain people that are meant or better suited for certain jobs. And I think that when we as leaders are hiring in our organizations and we're thinking about that, there are going to be specific personality types that may be a better fit than just, you know, anyone who comes to the door.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to put a pin in that because I want to come back to that here in just a minute. But to reiterate to what you were saying, I really credit yoga as being something that has helped me tremendously in my life. I don't want to get too preachy about yoga, but so much of the things that I have learned on the mat, I take off the mat. I am someone who feels my anxiety and I feel it sometimes very heavily. I remember, Jenna Fisher, who played Pam Beasley on The Office.
Yes, of course.
Of course you do.
Yes, of
Literally, you
course.
have her picture behind you, Pam's picture
Yes.
right there behind you.
Yes, I certainly do know Pam Beasley Halpert.
Yes. So spoiler alert, by the way, you just dropped
Oh my
her
gosh.
very
I'm sorry
name.
to everyone who has not seen The Office since it's been out for like 20 years. Apologies for the
Yes.
spoiler.
But Jenna Fisher talked about her anxiety one time as being like a backpack that she carries. And I really like that way of thinking about it. There are times when that backpack is so heavy that it's all that you feel. And there are times when the backpack is so light you forget you're wearing it, but it's always there. And as someone who suffers from anxiety at times and who feels anxiety very deeply and goes to therapy for anxiety, like the lessons that I have learned from yoga have been so instrumental, I think, in helping me be able to combat that. However, there is no yoga pose or no number of yoga classes that I can go to that is going to fix a toxic workplace. When I
Right.
go back to work after I get off my mat, if I still have an unsupportive boss who is yelling at me, if I still have work demands that are so high that there's no way that I can meet them, if I still feel like there's no opportunity for advancement, no one appreciates me, no one values the work that I do, I don't see how my work ties to the larger mission, I'm not connected with anybody at work. Like, if all of those things are happening, there's no amount of yoga that fixes that.
Right.
And to turn around and look at somebody who is experiencing anxiety or who may be appearing to not be resilient and say, can't you just be tougher? Is such an offense to me. And I think it is very true, as you said, that we should probably be careful about making sure that we are hiring people who are capable of doing the jobs. Absolutely. But I would also like caution against leaders being too selective and just saying like, well, gosh darn, why don't I just not ever hire anybody that's like high on neuroticism? And maybe there is a level of like neuroticism that's too high for a job. But I do think that if you could look at those people who might be a little bit higher on neuroticism and see them as the opportunity to be the alarm that is in your
Mhm.
organization that's telling you when it's bad. Because if your
Yeah.
super resilient people are just going to keep on and being resilient, if the if those quote unquote strong workers just come in day after day after day and they're giving their all and they never ring the bell, by the time they tell you that they're burned out, by the time they stop singing in the coal mine, like it's way too far gone. So you
Yeah.
could look at those people as being like the sensitive types, if you will, in your organization could actually be doing you a favor by ringing the alarm bells about the burnout.
Yeah. What's that adage? Like the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Like,
Yeah.
the more emu they are.
Oh God.
I don't know what emus can do in that situation where like fall, um but I think that's a great point because having folks that are a little more sensitive to issues will help you as a leader be able to notice, you know, some things that you can change early on before it becomes like a large problem and you see
Yes.
like a lot of staff turnover. So I think that's a really great point. That we see the Canary not just as a worker, but also as an alarm system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's telling you something's wrong and you need to fix
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
And instead of the fix being, uh, let's have a pizza party, which, hey, look, I'm all for a pizza party.
I love pizza.
It's my favorite. But that you can't like yoga party your have pizza parties or yoga or self-care your way out of like at some point the workplace has to change.
Hmm.
And I know we've talked about it before, especially with nonprofits being very resistant to change. Like a lot of
Yeah.
nonprofits like, oh, but we've always done it this way. Okay, but do you have to like, does it have to be done this way? Like, do people have to work this many hours in this way? Does the
Yeah.
to be structured in this way? Like, can we be creative about things related to like job crafting or flexible schedules? Or like, just because an intervention didn't work before doesn't mean that it won't work in the future. Like, times are different, things are different. Like, at some point, you got to change the workplace. That's what needs to change.
Yeah, that's a great point, and it reminds me of a story where I was the leader in the situation, and I had a staff person come to me about a change that they wanted to see made. So I've mentioned on the podcast before, our organization puts on a very large 3-day convention with like hundreds of people that come, and we do continuing education courses. And as a part of those courses, folks complete an evaluation form, and then we process a certificate of completion for them for their licensure. And for years, that was done in a manual way. We would pass out paper evaluations in each of our workshops. We would collect those. We would input the data into a computer, and then we would create a certificate for all those people individually. And we hired a gal who came in and took one look at that process and was like, we cannot do that this way. Like we need to change, and here's how we can make that change. And me,
And do it in a way that reduces the workload, right? Like it's,
oh, 100%. But as a leader, this is one of those instances where like I needed to grow as a leader, because my first inclination was like, what if the tech fails? We've always done it this way and it works just fine. Why would we change it now? I have been the person that's been doing this for years and I've been doing just fine. And why can't we keep it that way? Um, and I was really resistant to that change. And looking back at it now, it was like, girl, why were you you should not have been resistant to that. But I was so worried about, what if it failed? What if something went wrong? What are the fall stops, the fail safes on that? And so like it just illuminated for me, like that is an instance where as a leader I needed to listen and let my folks create systems that worked better for them, as long as it got the same result that we needed. And that is still the system that we use today to process all of our continuing education stuff. It's all done electronically. There's very little manual processing involved in it, and it saves us an exponential amount of time, just a bananas amount of time.
yeah, yeah. And that workload, as we've talked about before, workload is a significant predictor of burnout,
Yeah.
especially the emotional exhaustion dimension of burnout. If you want your people to experience really negative repercussions, you should work them many, many hours, because that's the number one way to do it.
Yeah.
And if you can find a way to change that reduces workload significantly, that is going to make the coal mine, if you will, not toxic. It's going to make it a better workplace. I think that to your point, and it's funny that you're talking about change. We also have an episode about organizational change and resistance to change. Christina Maslach and Michael Leiter at the end of the Burnout Challenge spend a significant amount of time talking about change and how to make change effective, because that is the big component of it. I think it's easier for leaders to look at employees and say, well, you need to do something different, rather than changing an internal system, which could be very disruptive and doesn't have guaranteed success. And like that can be super scary. So by pushing the change onto the workers, you're like, well, everybody just needs to do whatever is good for them. And, we're just going to keep the system the way that it is. I mean, that sounds much less risky and sounds like something that a lot of organizations would prefer to do, is just to like keep the systems that we have. But instead, what Christina Maslach and Michael Leiter talk about is no. Like we got to change the coal mine, and we know that's hard. And so we're going to kind of guide you through all of the ways that you can go about change to ensure that it is actually better change, and that it's something that is going to like benefit everyone in the long run. So I don't want to be too flippant and just say like, just change the mine, without recognizing that that is not an easy thing to do at all.
Yeah, and it's really it's really not an easy thing to do. So like I'm thinking about our coal mine analogy. And so we've got canaries and we've got the miners, we've got the coal mine, and then so like we've got leadership, right? And maybe those are like the foremen, or four women. Maybe those are the four people who are working at the coal mine. And so it is their responsibility to make the coal mine a non-toxic, safe place for those miners and canaries to be.
Yeah.
So how do we, Courtney, what can we tell leaders? How can we instruct leaders or give them tips and tricks on how to make our coal mines less toxic?
Could I maybe say something a little like controversial or hot take?
I'd love it. Yes,
Okay.
please.
I would say to the leader, the organization head,
Mhm.
um, why are we mining? Why are we mining anyway? What are we doing? Why are we in the mine? Why is this the way that we're doing it? What are we doing? I would say I would tie it back to mission. I would go back to, I would really like question everything. I would re-examine everything. And that can be very scary, but it could also be really exciting to say, like, what if we didn't, what if we got out of the mine altogether and we got into wind farming? Like, I don't know, like we just completely, right. Like you just completely change
Solar
what you're doing.
farms. Sure.
Right. And
Moving
they've
towards
actually,
something more sustainable and cleaner
yeah.
for your people. I like it.
Yeah, like, and they've actually been doing this since, as you know, in some of the mines in Eastern Kentucky, like they have turned some of these into like solar farms and things like that. Um, so I would encourage leaders to maybe think about just changing up the whole gosh darn thing. Now, for a nonprofit, like what does that mean?
Yeah.
If you're a nonprofit that's providing services to veterans, you know, as Cody Van Boxel, who was on our podcast earlier, talked about, like you're not going to change who you're providing services to.
Right.
Right. But could you fundamentally change how you're doing it? So maybe you're not changing your mission at all. Maybe your mission is still there. Maybe you're still servicing the same people, but the way that you're doing it is totally different. I think that um, I can just speak from my personal experience. I do not think that my university was really pre-pandemic excited at all about online classes, right? Like that was just not something that we really were discussing or talking about. There are other
Sure.
universities who certainly were doing that and were doing a good job with it, doing it better. It was not something that we were really thinking about. And then the pandemic made us question everything. And we were like, well, what if we do teach online classes? Like, what would that look like? And what would an online education at our institution be different? How would we still set ourselves apart? How would we still provide what we call the Bellarmine difference, but in an online class? It was an opportunity, a very stressful time, but an opportunity to think about things differently. And it certainly has made me think about things differently as an educator, even post pandemic in my in person classes. Like, are there ways that I could do it differently than the way that I've always done it before? And so, yeah, that's the first thing I would tell leaders is to maybe be a little bit more like open, creative about questioning why do you have a toxic mind to begin with? Why is that the work that you're having to do? And can you do
Yeah.
something different?
And I do want to acknowledge, like, as a person who's in the nonprofit sector, who's been here for a long time and has kind of seen like the cycles of history play out, as if you will. Um, I do think that right now, specifically, it does feel like we're going through a lot of change that's outside of our control, anyways. So I do want to acknowledge and be sensitive to the fact that there are nonprofit leaders out there that are dealing with like funding issues, on whether or not they're going to get federal grants, things like that. Things do feel like they are changing for you a lot. And so, like, understanding that folks are going through that and are feeling like there is a lot of change that is happening in their organizations that's kind of outside their control. But what I think you're saying is more like looking at the internal processes and the way that we are doing our work, and maybe looking at some of these changes that are happening outside of our control, like the pandemic, and using those as like a, okay, well, this thing is happening, how are we responding to it, and how can we change our processes in response to that in a way that benefits and pays attention to the wellness of the people who are doing the work in our organizations.
Yeah. And I think that's where you can look towards some of the research on these interventions for burnout. And you can see that you can actually make some pretty substantial changes, even in the midst of a lot of this uncertainty. And there's a lot of things that you can't control around funding and around, hiring and unemployment. Like there's a lot of like larger economic social system things that maybe you aren't able to control, especially in the nonprofit sector. What are the things you can't control? It's like, okay, to some extent, I can control people's work schedules. I can control their workload. I can control ways in which people who work together are able to build connections with each other, like social connections, social support. I can change the kind of demands that I am putting on my employees. I can help them to set up boundaries. I can help them to see that their work has value and meaning, and I can recognize them for good work, and I can help them tie their individual values to the workplace's values, and their individual goals to the workplace mission. And like these are the things that you can do.
Well, and I can change as a leader, I can change my behavior. I can be
Yes.
more empathetic. I
Yes.
can, as one says, practice what I preach. I can set examples for folks so that they see that they're important.
Yes.
If I'm doing it, I also want you to be doing it, right? If I'm setting
Yes.
boundaries, you can set boundaries. I'm going back to our conversation with Cody Van Boxel when he's like, sometimes I'll answer emails, but I'm scheduling those emails so that they go out during work hours so people don't see that and think that they should be answering emails off hours. So I do think that it also starts with the leadership and setting those examples for their folks on ways to be well in the workplace.
Yes. Yeah. No, the leaders modeling the behavior and being able to just kind of, the leaders are so instrumental in shaping of the culture and the vibe. I mean, I can remember some of the places that I've worked, restaurants that I've worked in. My shift would be so incredibly different. Same workplace,
Mm.
same menu, same corporate structure. But my day, my shift would be so different depending on who was the manager that day.
Yes. I worked in grocery, similar experience. Yes.
Right? Like
Yeah.
whoever the manager was. And if I walked in and I saw that, like, you're the manager, I'd be like, oh, we're about to have a good day. This is going to be a good shift.
Yeah.
This is the manager. Oh boy,
Mm-hmm.
this is not going to be an enjoyable experience for me. So I would tell like leaders, even supervisors, you don't even have to be the, C-suite of an organization. Like even supervisors, don't underestimate the effect that you can have on your employees in your demeanor, in the way that you communicate, in the way that you implement policies and programs and strategies. So even if you're not the one that's like has all of the power to make huge changes, you can make small changes that can make a considerable difference in people's everyday lives.
Absolutely. And going back to kind of the example that I gave earlier about a time where I I needed to look back and reflect and grow from that experience where I told my staff person like I don't want to change that. um I I approach those situations differently now
Mm.
because in reflection, me saying I don't want to change that tells my employee A, that I don't trust them to make that change. And B, that we're not changing anything while I'm around. Like it is what it is. I've been here for a million years and I like it the way it is. And so now when I approach those things, I really have to think about like, I hired this person for a reason. I trust that the work that they're doing is good and that they are going to be open to my feedback if they show me a thing and I'm like, can we tweak it a little bit? So I think that we can reflect on past experiences and we can learn and grow from those experiences so that the next time we find ourselves in a similar situation, we can behave or act a little differently.
Right. Yeah. The lesson is for employees who are experiencing burnout. It's not your fault. And if you are experiencing it and you are telling your leader that you're burned out, you're the canary in the coal mine that could be saving everybody else. Like you could be the one alerting the leaders to there's a big problem here. We got to do something to fix it. And then if you are a leader who's hearing your people tell you something's wrong, you need to listen to them and you need to be willing to change the way you're doing things. Change your approach, change your communication, change the strategies, the policies. Um, Maybe just get them out of the coal mine to begin with.
Yeah.
like take the toxic out of the workplace to begin with. And don't be afraid of that change, even though it's scary. Like, don't be afraid of that change because it could be something that could make a real meaningful difference in people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that entire cycle actually starts with like creating psychological safety in your workplaces. So if you haven't seen that episode yet, like make sure you check that out. But I think that it is incumbent upon leaders to create a culture and an environment where your staff are not afraid to come to you with questions, concerns, changes, potential changes. Um, and for you as a leader to thoughtfully consider those things and make decisions based on not only what is better for your organization and the external people that your nonprofit may be serving, but also what is best for the people that are actually doing the work.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you brought up our episode on psych safety too, because another thing that I will just add to that is don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah.
If you are trying something new and the computer doesn't work, the system fail, like you're at least trying. You're
Mm-hmm.
putting forth some effort. You're listening to your people. You're putting forth effort. You're trying to make things better. And I think that people, your workers will, that can just buy a lot. And that can go a long way if you have a leader who tries something new and tries a change, even if it's not 100% successful. At least you were making an attempt based on the feedback from your employees to do something different and better. So it's not just about change. It's not just about psych safety. It's kind of like all of these things together that create like a really good workplace. And that does include, like, again, the workers making sure that they set boundaries and that they are taking care of themselves. Like, we do want to make sure that workers are enjoying the benefits of a good spa day or I am kind of giggling before I'm even saying it because of how funny it is. But you know, the treat yourself.
Treat yourself.
Treat yourself 2026, right? For Parks and
Yes.
Rec. Like, yeah, there needs to be like, yes, you need to take a day where you treat yourself and you do the things that you find enjoyable. Like, life is too short to not be living it. And you should be with your family. You should be doing fun things. You should do yoga. You should have a spa day, like all of those things. But that's not enough to overcome toxic workplaces. Like, both of
Yeah.
these things have to be happening in tandem for us to all be getting the most benefit out of the work that we're doing. And I say that because, again, our focus is on nonprofits here. A lot of people are doing this work because it provides incredible meaning
Mm-hmm.
and purpose in their life. They go to work every day for the mission. And you want to be able to continue to provide that service and meet that mission because you care about it so deeply. And sometimes that means like turning it off and taking care of yourself. And it also means that the leader has to make sure that you're setting up boundaries and providing good modeling and creating a workplace that is not toxic and will change and provides lots of psychological safety.
Right. So for the staff people in nonprofits who are listening to this, the takeaway is self-care is great. You should absolutely do all of the things that make you feel good in your life. Courtney mentioned a lot of really great ones. You could, but the takeaway for leaders is that that self-care that a staff person is doing is not going to combat their burnout at work. So, like,
Correct.
also leaders, you should also be taking care of yourself outside of work.
Yes.
Um, you should also prioritize yourself outside of work. But that is not the solution to the toxic coal mine.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this. I think that this we talked about boats, we talked about multiple types of birds. I think that I just think that it's such a good analogy, right? And especially coming from, a state where coal mining is very prevalent. It is steeped within our heritage and history. And so I just think it's kind of a perfect analogy for folks in Kentucky to because, like you said in fourth grade, fifth grade civics class where we're talking about all of that
Yeah.
stuff, like you know about the Canary and you know about the coal mine. So I think that that resonates. Um, but I like that you're saying maybe we should just get out of the coal mine.
Yeah.
Maybe we've maybe the coal mine is now an antiquated workplace and
Yep.
that we as nonprofits can get along with the times, use some technology to our advantage, make work a little easier, a little more
Yeah.
efficient, less time, take some things off people's plates and let the computers deal with it.
Yeah. Right. Just let the computers run the world and let's just all go
No,
to the beach. No,
let's
no.
not let them run the world. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Right.
Um
Yeah.
but they
Yeah.
can they can input the information into a spreadsheet for me.
That's right.
So I don't have
Exactly.
to do it manually. I I
That's
will
exactly
I will
right.
concede to that. And yes, also to the beach. I'm also 100%
Yeah.
behind being at the beach.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, I love this topic. For those of you who are interested in the burnout challenge, we'll link that in our show notes so that you have access to that information.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. Good conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Courtney.
Our last segment of every episode is our ripples of gratitude, where we intentionally thank someone in our lives, hopefully inspiring all of you to be thankful to someone in your own life. Therefore, ripples of gratitude will go throughout our community. And today, Sarah, I want to give my ripple of gratitude out um, to yoga specifically, and all of the yoga instructors that I've had over the years. As I mentioned in this episode, I do think it's important that we take care of ourselves. And I really have found yoga as being a great way for me to be able to do that, to center myself. A lot of the things that I tell myself on the mat are things that I literally say in my everyday life. Be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like that's something that I tell myself whenever I'm like in a situation that I'm like, well, I really don't want to be in this meeting, or, like there's something that's happening that I'm like, I'd rather not be doing this. It's like, oh, could I be comfortable with being uncomfortable? Like learning how to move and meditate, learning how to just feel the feelings in your body without telling stories about those feelings, which is a big struggle with people with anxiety. And so I'm so incredibly thankful to the many, many people who have guided me through this practice, all of the instructors that I've had, and the people that introduced me to this practice. And it literally is something that I build my schedule around every single week. And I really miss it when I don't have it. I work out in other ways, but I will never give up my yoga because it is so central to my life and it keeps me sane. So I'm very incredibly thankful that I have found that practice.
That's awesome. I love yoga. I am not as on it as I should be. I don't do it as often as I would like. But I do at night, I'll throw out my yoga mat and I'll just sit and I'll stretch. Even like even if we have like a show on or something, usually I try to do it where there's not any other input, but sometimes, just sitting in silence and stretching, just there's something about that just grounds you in a way that nothing else does.
Yep, yep. I would be embarrassed to tell you how many times I've cried in Shavasana. There are just some poses, especially for those of you who don't practice yoga, that's at the very end when you lay in what sometimes is called corpse pose. A lot of big emotions can come from that. Big emotions can come from other poses. Like I hate camel pose so much. It's the bane of my existence. I hate it. I get angry and want to throw up every time that I do it. But I do it anyway. And
Yeah.
I always feel better. Like no matter what the practice is, no matter how distracting it is, no matter the space that I'm in, I always feel better after engaging in that activation of my parasympathetic nervous system and helping me to be able to just get right with my mind and with my body. So highly encourage it if you've never done yoga before. It could potentially change your life. I don't know. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. What about you, Sarah? What's your ripple today?
So I'm going to send my ripple out to a past colleague of mine, Sam Omby. She is the person who came to me and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to change this whole process on how you process convention evaluations and certificates." And she would still joke about that years later. She worked for our organization for over 8 years, and she would still bring that up, like, "Oh, remember how like you really didn't want me to change that, and how great it turned out?" And it's like, yes, it did. It turned out great. I was resistant. Um, but something that really sticks with me and reflecting on that relationship and working with Sam is not only was she always coming up with ways to make things more efficient, but she was so patient with me while I was going, like I was just little baby Sarah learning how to be a leader in my organization. And you mentioned in a previous episode, the vast majority, not the vast majority, but a majority of leaders and organizations do not get trained on how to be a supervisor. We're good at our current jobs, and they're like, "Hey, you can also now supervise people because you're also good at your job." And I did not know how to be a leader at that point. And Sam was so patient with me and always very encouraging, and was just a wonderful coworker to have for 8 years. So in reflecting on our conversations today, I just really wanted to shout her out because she's great, and she helped me learn a lot and she helped me grow a lot. So my ripple goes out to Sam Omby today.
Yeah, and Sam especially wonderful person, but
Yes.
also just all of those employees, staff who are willing to go up to their supervisor and make those suggestions. Like kudos to
Mm,
you for having the courage to do that. And I'm glad that she was able to remind you for many years later that it turned out
yes.
fine and it turned out better. So
Well, and that helped me let go of some of that fear of change. She was right. It was fine. Our organization is better off for having made that change.
right,
So
exactly.
yeah, big kudos out to Sam.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this episode of the Burnout Room is sponsored by the Kentucky Psychological Foundation. If you'd like to help support our work by bringing free mental health resources to Kentucky nonprofits, please consider donating at kentuckypsychologicalfoundation.org.
A huge thanks to our producer, Sophia Schindler, for all of her fantastic, amazing work, and to my dad, Mike Russell, for composing our music.
And to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in and being a part of our community. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And feel free to leave a comment about topics that would be most helpful for you and your organization.
We will see you all next time. I just saw something on LinkedIn that was looking at all of these like interventions and things related to wellness, all these interventions, things that like increase or decrease your risk of like premature death or whatever, like bad outcomes. And eating cheese slightly helps.
It's got to be more than slight, Court. Cheese is
No,
life. Cheese
th-
is exactly what I live for.
I know.
Cheese makes
I
the
know.
world go round. Thank you, cheese.
I know. I want it to be higher than it is. It's in fact not that high as like, connections with like meaningful relationships are more important than cheese. But
Sure, but can you imagine how meaningful a relationship would be if you were together eating
eating
cheese?
cheese, yeah. Yeah. What could be better?
An unstoppable duo.
What could be better?
Meaningful relationships and cheese. I'm
Wow.
in. That makes sense.
Okay, good. I'm glad that you and I agree about that.
We are not sponsored by cheese. We
We are
could
not.
be. Big
Look,
cheese.
if the folks that make the Parmigiano Reggiano would like to sponsor the Burnout Room,
Give us a
be
call.
happy be happy to go over to Italy and see how they deal with burnout in the realm of the best cheese in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I would be delighted to do that. Give us a call. We'll come and we'll come and test all your cheeses.